Hey guys, today we're in the last chapter, Genesis chapter 50. We've made it to the end of Genesis. I hope you are happy. I'm so proud of you guys, and I'm looking forward to moving along. But in chapter 50, it starts with this idea of telling us that Joseph fell over his father's face. Remember that he has been rekindled with him. He has lived a while there in Egypt with him, but now his father goes. Of course, he is sad. And he tells his Egyptian servants to embalm his father. That's an Egyptian thing, right? So embalm his father, and so they embalm him. And it says 40 days were required for it. But notice what it says in verse 3. And the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. Now, that don't mean much to us today, but here's what really shows us what Egypt thought about Joseph, okay? The the limit for a royal mourning. If a pharaoh was to die, all of Egypt would have to mourn for 72 days. That was what was mandated for Pharaoh, a god, that all of Egypt would mourn. Here we have the father of Joseph died, and all of Egypt mourned for 70 days, 2 days less than what they would for a God. So you can see that the love for Joseph, the blessing that he brought, Pharaoh allowing him to cause this mourning, allowing all this to happen, you can see that the love and the respect that they had for Joseph, and as all of Egypt mourned a death of a Hebrew. It's a miracle. It's crazy that it happened, but it happened. And so they go on, they die. And so Joseph, once again, even though he's the number two man of Egypt, has to come to Pharaoh and say, my dad made me swear that he would not be buried here, but he has dug himself a cave, and he wants to be buried with his ancestors in Canaan. Can I go? And Pharaoh says, absolutely. Once again, showing the love and respect of Joseph in this Egyptian court under this Pharaoh. And Pharaoh answered, said, go bury him. And they go and bury him. But what was interesting as you read this is how many people went with him, right? It wasn't just Joseph and the 11 other sons and maybe some of their sons, but it was this huge Egyptian entourage, right? This huge parade had gone out all the way to Canaan to bury him. And it says in verse 10 that they had a very great and grievous lamentation, so much so that the inhabitants of Canaan saw this and thought, whoa, this is somebody special if Egypt came all the way out here to bury somebody and to mourn somebody. And so it just tells us once again of who Joseph really was for Egypt. And so they bury him in Machpelah. And after this, they returned back to Egypt. Like he had promised Pharaoh. And when Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, it may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil that we did. For one, they understood that what they did to Joseph was evil, the evil that we did. But number two is they're not believing in Joseph. They're afraid that now their father is gone, he's going to get justice. He's going to get revenge. And so they call Joseph and they say, hey, dad told us to tell you on his deathbed that your father gave us a command before he died. Say to Joseph, please forgive the transgressions of your brother and your sin. Notice it says, and Joseph wept. Joseph wept because he knew his dad didn't say that. He knew that they were lying. He knew that they did not trust him as he probably thought that they did. All that he's done to keep them alive and provide them from food and give them the best land and all the Egyptian stuff, and for the years and years of taking care of them and their wives and their children. And now this is done. Now they're scared of him. And this truly probably broke Joseph's heart. And that's why he wept. And his brothers also came and fell down before him. Notice that Joseph's dream, right? Fell down again and said, behold, we are your servants. And Joseph said, do not fear. Am I in the place of God? Joseph said to them, am I the judge or is God the judge? God's the judge. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to bring justice to you. That's God's job, not my job. Notice that Joseph had all the power in the world, but he still allowed God to judge. He did not put himself above God. And notice verse 20, a very familiar verse. And he says this, as for you, you meant evil against me when you wanted to kill me. Then you sold me and then you sent me away. You meant bad for me. You meant harm for me, but God meant it for good. We see Paul echoing these words in Romans chapter 8, verse 28, that God will bring all things to his goodness and his glory, right? And so that is just a moment for us to say, no matter where we're walking, no matter what we're going through, God hasn't forgotten us. God is with us, and God has a plan for us. And so keep trusting and have faith in God. Verse 21, so do not fear. He tells his brothers, do not fear. I will provide for you. And he comforted them. They accused him of saying that he was going to bring justice. And here he says, I'm not God. And then he goes above and beyond and shows them even more love. He provided for them. He comforted them. He told them not to fear. So Joseph remained in Egypt and lived a long time. And Joseph came and said, I'm about to die. But God will visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so here we have Abraham. God promised Abraham a promised land. Abraham promised Isaac. Isaac promised Jacob. Jacob promised Joseph. And now Joseph is promising his brothers. We can see that this Abrahamic covenant that God promised keeps getting passed down and down. And he says, he will bring you to the promised land. Then God made the sons of Israel swear that God will surely visit you, and you shall carry my bones from here. We'll find out later in the book of Exodus, chapter 13, that Moses carries the bones of Joseph into the promised land, right? Well, it doesn't carry him into them. He takes them with him, and eventually they will get there when they cross in Joshua. And so it's interesting. He says they embalmed him and he was put in a coffin. So we're told in Hebrews chapter 11 that Joseph was not buried. He was embalmed and put in a coffin, but was not buried, was not put in a sarcophagus, but he was left there because he knew under his commands that he did not want to be buried in Egypt. He wanted to go back to the promised land, just like his father, just like his grandfather, just like his great grandfather. And that's the book of Genesis. It leaves us on the edge of saying, what's next, right? He dies, and even Joseph is looking forward to going to the promised land, even in his death. And so we kind of end one book looking to turn the page to say, what's next? But you would ask yourself, where is Jesus in chapter 50, right? Where's he at? Well, we can see if we carry out this idea that Joseph is like Jesus, right? People are afraid that Joseph is going to retaliate, where people are scared of him. People are scared of Jesus, of retaliating and doing judgment and righteous. And here he says, I'm not God, but I love you. I want to be with you. And he comforted them. He told them not to fear, and he provided for them. There is no condemnation in those who are in Jesus Christ. Even though we do bad things, even though we feel at times that maybe God should punish us, but if we are in Jesus, he will not punish us. He will grab us and tell us not to fear. He will continue to provide for us, and he will comfort us. I'm so glad that we have finished the book of Genesis, and I'm so looking forward to the book of Exodus, to continuing God's promises all the way through Israel. We'll see you tomorrow in Exodus chapter 1. God bless.